Okay, I think we're good.
All right, it is 7:31, so I am going to go ahead and call the Tuesday, October 20th, 2020 meeting of the Oxford City Council to order. Ms. Eaton, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Bracken.
Here.
Mr. Ellerby.
Here.
Mr. Frithridge.
Here.
Mr. Snavely.
I'm here.
Ms. Southard.
Here.
Mayor Smith.
Here.
I don't see Ms. Ragu. Is that correct?
Oh, she's on now.
She's on
There
now.
she is.
Well, I
Ms.
saw her.
Ragu.
Here.
Okay, all right. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Snavely, second.
Seconded.
Second by Councilor Southard. All right, Ms. Eaton, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Ellerby.
Yes.
Mr. Frithridge.
Yes.
Ms. Ragu.
Yes.
Mr. Snavely.
Yes.
Ms. Southard.
Yes.
Mr. Bracken.
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. All right, we're going to begin tonight with a presentation on Butler County Elderly Services Program from Sabrina Jewell.
Hi, everyone. I think many of you know me. I am the Outreach and Marketing Coordinator at Oxford Seniors. And in that capacity, I am also on the board of the Butler County Elderly Services Program Advisory Board. Our program, the Elderly Services Program, has been around since the late 90s. And we are a tax levied program, and we're up for renewal this election. It is a renewal, it is not a increase. And we have in the past, I think the past 3 elections, we've gotten at least 75% or higher positive voting in our favor. Right now, the tax levy is a 1.3 mil levy, which is about $39-40 per $100,000 of property value for people who own and real estate in Butler County. We currently have over 4,000 clients and families who are being served in Butler County. 62 of those are in Oxford, 52 are in Oxford Township, and then quite a few in the other townships surrounding. Lifespan is the organization that has the elderly services contract. Jessica, will you show them the tax levy diagram, please? So this is just kind of a nice, simple diagram picture that shows how the money is spent. Most of it goes to hands-on in-home services. It also can provide home modifications, which can include grab bars, durable medical equipment, wheelchair ramps, and different things to help people accommodate life at home with some disabilities or just diminished abilities. They also are the funders for the Meals on Wheels program, and Oxford Seniors happens to be the contracted provider for Meals on Wheels with elderly services in our area here. Medical transportation, home care services, adult day program. So currently Oxford Seniors Community Adult Day Service is the only active, well, we're not active right now due to COVID, but the only other Butler County ADS program closed during COVID. So right now we are the only one in Butler County, which is very interesting because, as you all know, in Oxford, we're kind of when you look at the county, we're a little bit of a stepchild. And so one of the things that has been discussed is, do we need to find a new location and maybe be in closer to Hamilton to serve a greater number of families? We don't even know when the adult day program is going to open. So that's kind of on the back burner right now. We also pair up, do have a program with the Mental Health Board, providing a service called Uplift for seniors in their homes. And this is being done virtually now, where many seniors, like many of us, are feeling isolated and alone and having some mental health issues. And so this is a one-on-one program, whether they're coming in the home or they're doing, I think they're trying to do virtual. But as you all know, virtual is a little complicated these days with Wi-Fi and devices and the ability to use all of those if you happen to have them. One of the things I love about the Elderly Services Program is that it is available to everybody. It is income-based, based on the sliding fee scale. But even if you do not, even if you have to pay full price, you still can get services, and you get a care manager who helps to coordinate those services. And that is a really important thing, as you know, working parents are trying to take care of their elderly parents and juggle who's not coming in today because of childcare issues, and how do we get people to appointments and such. So Oxford Seniors also gets funding, not exactly through the Elderly Services, but through Council on Aging for transportation in our area. So this is issue 34 on the ballot this year. Again, it's not an increase in service in taxes. It is a renewal, and our families depend on us. We provide a lot of services, and I hope that, you know, we have your support. And if anybody would like a yard sign, we have quite a few at Oxford Seniors right now, so you can call and let us know you want a couple and stop by and we'll bring them out to you. We installed, I think, 75 4x4 signs around the county. I personally installed a couple, and it's a lot of work, I'll tell you that. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, okay. So the big thing is it's helping people remain in their homes, in their community, and not being in nursing homes spending Medicaid dollars. And so it's saving our county a lot of money by having this program and funding it through the tax levy. I will take questions if anybody has them.
Did you want me to show the other document, Sabrina?
That's a good one. Just 10 facts to know, and
Okay.
people, I can send it on, or we can send it as a link if anybody wants it by email. I'm also going to put in a plug for, it is Medicare open enrollment, which began October 15th and goes through December 7th for people who need to look at their prescription drug plans with Medicare, or if they're an OPERS retiree, and you have questions about your plans, you are welcome to call the Senior Center and ask for some assistance.
Do I have any questions? All right, well, we thank you for coming, and I think we're in support of this, and we will watch what happens in 2 weeks.
Absolutely. Vote early, vote often. I don't know. Thank you for your work. Thank you for my time tonight, and stay safe, everyone.
May
Thank
I,
you, Sabrina. You can't vote often, just remember.
may I add that free rides are available to any voter through the Senior Center. And this is an important service that the Senior Center is offering, and it helps make our Senior Center more central to our community, and I think it's a wonderful project. So thank you to the Senior Center for offering those rides, and I hope that they will be being used.
They are being used, and in fact, we've not only had quite a few seniors, but we've had quite a few students, which is great. And I think that was your idea initially,
It was.
Edna, and kudos to you. It was a good one and a great use of our vans that are sitting a little idle these days. And hopefully—
If there's anybody who can't be accommodated, I will also drive people to the polls.
Well, the idea began because, it was actually a selfish thing because people asked me if I would drive to the polls. And I thought, gosh, neither I nor anybody who is at risk should be driving people. And it is much safer to have the rides go through, a public service, a van where it can be sterilized or sanitized, and everybody is safer that way. So I think it's great that you're offering rides, and individually, of course, I would do that too. But I think this opportunity is a really great one that the Senior Center is offering.
Yep. Well, thank you. We're pleased to do it, and we, in fact, brought one of our adult day program aides back in, and is now working full time after having been furloughed. So it's a win-win.
Good.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. I'm going to actually go make some soup. So you have a good meeting. And if you have any questions, you know how to reach me.
Thank you very much. All right, we have a couple of proclamations tonight that I'd like to read. Whereas the Safe Return to Campus Planning Coordinating Committee provided advice and insight to the President and the President's Executive Cabinet on the university's efforts to prepare for the fall 2020 term following the outbreak of COVID-19 that required the closing of most on-campus operations during the spring term. Whereas the Safe Return to Campus Planning and Coordinating Committee operated transparently, provided weekly updates to the university community at large, as well as regular updates to the University Senate and the President's Executive Council. And whereas the Safe Return to Campus Planning and Coordinating Committee co-chairs, Dr. Dana Cox and Dr. Gwen Fears, provided a comprehensive update to City Council during their regular City Council meeting on July 7th, 2020. And whereas the Safe Return to Campus Planning and Coordinating Committee was made up of Miami University faculty and staff, students and postdocs, external advisors and internal advisors, and whereas the Oxford City Council personally and collectively on behalf of the government and the citizens of the city recognizes and congratulates the entire Safe Return to Campus Planning and Coordinating Committee for all their outstanding efforts for the good of all Oxford residents. So we wanted to mention them because they put in an awful lot of work this summer, upwards of 40 people on that committee that donated 7 or 8 weeks of time so that we could have students back this fall, which is very important to us. All right, the second one, whereas the Miami University President's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force provided expertise, advice, and insight on DEI efforts across the university and its campuses. And whereas the Miami University President's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force examined the university's efforts and acknowledged that despite years of efforts to elevate the campus culture at Miami, including the values it upholds, the university fell short of important progress. And whereas the task force worked for 7 weeks, examining 5 focus areas: dialogue and allyship, cultural consciousness, advocacy and partnerships, structural and resource support, and inclusion and accountability. And whereas the task force has created a comprehensive set of ideas that will further solidify Miami's commitment to the and advancement of its efforts in inclusive excellence for students, faculty, staff, and alumni. And whereas President Crawford has said, Miami will move aggressively to implement the plan and enhance the diversity that's part of the core values at Miami. And whereas the Oxford City Council personally and collectively on behalf of the government and the citizens of the city recognizes and congratulates the entire Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force for their outstanding efforts for the good of all Oxford residents. So everyone on both committees received a copy of that proclamation, and I believe they were also cited by the president for the work that they put in. So we will await progress on both. All right, now we'll move on. I have a notice to legislative authority, and I believe Mr. Elliott is going to present that.
Yes, thank you. The city has an application for a new permit. It's a D5A permit, and a D5A permit is for a hotel or motel with 50 or more rooms for transient guests. There's no quota restriction on this type of a permit. If you have a hotel, you can apply for this. There was a existing permit that was held by the owners of the MIA restaurant. As you know, that restaurant closed during the COVID crisis, and the owners of the Elms Hotel have applied for this new permit. They plan to open a restaurant there, and they want to make it a family-friendly restaurant. It will not have a nightclub atmosphere there. That's their game plan. It'll be similar to the Gaslight Brew House. It will not be a sports bar because they already have a sports bar, B-Dubs, on the first floor. So we have this permit, and we received the notice from the state. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
I see Vice Mayor Snavely has a question.
I move that we receive it without comment.
All right. Do I have a second? See second from Councillor Prithridge. Ms. Eaton, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. All right. We will anxiously await that new establishment. We will move on to public comments. Anyone wishing to address council about any item not on the agenda or on the consent agenda, please state your name and address for the record. And I would ask that you keep your comments to 5 minutes, and I will be monitoring this much more rigorously than I have in the past. So, Mrs. Green, do we have any public comments tonight?
Yes, we have a few. I also want to state just for the record that several e-comments were submitted. To those of you who sent those in, thank you. They've been shared with City Council and will be reflected in the minutes. For those raising hands tonight, I have Ms. Rosenberg. Ms. Rosenberg, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Shauna Rosenberg, and I live at 1036 Arrowhead Drive here in Oxford. Good evening, councilors. I'm here to speak as a member of the Black Lives Matter Oxford group. Before I say anything else, I first want to express my gratitude to all of the people who have been a part of the process of bringing our 3 proposals to life. I am grateful for the continued attention of City Council about these matters, and to the PCRC members for deliberating thoughtfully about our proposals. I appreciate Jessica Green from the City Manager's Office for working with PCRC and OPD, and for Chief Jones, all working on the spirit of these proposals as well. I know that these are trying and busy times for everyone, and it is gratifying to see that these types of initiatives are still seen as important. I want to address some of the misconceptions that I've heard are being held about our proposals. In particular, our third proposal to ask that an independent task force be assigned to research and propose funding for alternatives to traditional police responses to crisis in the community, such as mental illness and addiction. Some have said that this will cost the city money and is not worth it. However, as you know, a task force formed by City Council is composed of volunteers and would require minimal investment from the city, perhaps only for supplies. There are many people in the community ready and willing to volunteer their time. Some have said that the PCRC was formed for exactly this purpose, to make recommendations on changes to our police department. But it is not the scope of the PCRC to have expertise in the issues of crisis response that may be better served by services outside of the police force. If PCRC were to be the task force, they would need to find input from the same volunteers willing to serve on an independent task force now. PCRC members themselves voted to recommend an independent task force rather than taking that task on themselves. And finally, there is the misconception that our proposals are anti-police. We are not here as enemies of the Oxford Police Department. We think that our third proposal would unburden OPD officers from the aspects of crisis response that don't affect public safety. The issue at hand is about appropriate response for crises that help our diverse citizenry feel safe. This is bigger than our local police department in this snapshot in time. There's a national reckoning about racial justice, which is also throwing a light on the idea that policing can change to address the concerns of a changed society with increased diversity. We think that Oxford has an opportunity to be a model for other communities and how police and other services respond to crises. The formation of an independent task force is supported by many respected organizations in our community, and also has the support of the Miami Departments of Psychology and Family and Social Work. This includes Oxford's League of Women Voters, Oxford PFLAG, the Oxford chapter of the NAACP, and Miami's Interfaith Center. I think this kind of support should inform counselors that our proposals, including the creation of an independent task force, are not unreasonable. I look forward to when this matter will be before you on the agenda. Once again, I appreciate your time tonight and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have, looks like Kevin Anderson. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Debbie Anderson. Good evening, everybody. My address is 3903 Harris Road, and I am speaking for the support of the Oxford Police Department. And I will be brief. Like everyone at this meeting, we all love Oxford, and we love the people of Oxford, and including all ethnicities and all nationalities. But my concern is for the treatment of the Oxford Police Department. Council received 146 more signatures to equal 721 voices for the support of the Oxford Police Department. And I believe city council members have been receiving numerous emails supporting the police department as well. My question is, have there been any allegations in the last 12 to 24 months that show misconduct in the OPD in regard to minority relations? And if so, wouldn't the Oxford Police Community Relations and Review Commission in place look at any problems that might arise? I believe that the Oxford Police Department should be given the respect and the trust of City Council to continue their professional work and to determine their own improvements as they see fit. Black Lives Matter is asking for authorization to form a task force to research alternatives to policing through City Council for funding with taxpayer dollars and perhaps to partially defund the police department. If you, City Council, did not initiate the research, why is it being done or funded, or who would fill the seats, or what would be the scope and sequence of the task force? My concern is, wouldn't it be best for all, including the Black Lives Matter group, to do their own research, do it with their own funds? They have a place for funding on their website, and they can submit their findings to City Council at a later date when they're finished. Without being city mandated, they have much more freedom to explore their options as an independent group. City Council would not have to appoint task force members, representative of the whole community, or oversee the work with an already busy schedule. So in closing, I and hundreds of others believe it is best for the Oxford Police Department to improve themselves, and they are very open to comments and the concerns of the community. They want the best police force they can be for the city of Oxford. And I believe it is best for Oxford to allow Black Lives Matter to conduct their own research and their findings independently and report it respectfully to City Council. Thank you for hearing me.
All right, thank you.
Okay, at this time, I do not see any other hands raised.
All right.
Oh, I spoke too soon. I'm sorry. There is a couple more hands raised. I have, it looks like a Jean Pateman. Jean Pateman, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jean Pateman. I'm a student at Talawanda High School, and I have lived in Oxford pretty much my entire life. And living here, I've had myself experiences, I have heard experiences for other, and I've seen experiences where there has been misconduct by the police, or in situations where a different organization or a different group could have handled situations much better than our Oxford police. Just recently, while the Butler County and Oxford has a mask mandate in place, the police provided security at a rally where no masks were being worn. We see these kind of things happen all the time, and these issues can be solved by investigating these issues that are taking place in our police department. And the thing is the request for this task force isn't asking for the erasure of the police or defunding the police. It's asking for us to look into the police to see what can be done to improve. And I, as the last person said, care a lot about Oxford and the people in it. And I want this community to be the best it can be. And the way we can do that is by consistently improving our programs and our community programs to make them the best they can be. And the only way we can do that is to continue to review and look into the programs we have and the systems we have to make sure that they fit the way the world works now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. We have I have a Jenny. That's all I have. Jenny, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Witt. I live at 6015 Joseph Drive. I've been a long-term Oxford resident ever since I graduated from Miami. I won't say how many years ago. My concern is that, because concerning the mask ordinance, recently I have submitted the form on your site and I've been in communication with Seth Kropenbaker. And so I've had some communications with him, and recently I observed a Oxford Township police officer inside a local business just hanging out without a mask. I submitted the photo of the incident to Seth, and in the course of our conversation, I asked him about the mask ordinance and whether it was being enforced. According to the city website, says that both the mask ordinance and the other ordinance about large group gatherings are being enforced by the Oxford Police, but I have not observed that to be the case. And Seth confirmed in his email to me that 0 citations have been given. 0. All around town, and it's just not just me, but people I've been in contact with have observed numerous businesses not enforcing masks, numerous townsfolk and students not wearing masks. I have observed police officers observing people without masks entering stores and doing nothing. And I want to know, why is this ordinance not being enforced? I do believe that if citations were to be given in a very visible and very frequent manner, that it could make a difference in people obeying the mask ordinance. Thank you for your time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, now I do not see any other hands raised.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, we will move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move it.
Seconded.
Moved by Mr. Snavely, second by Councillor Southard. Any items to be removed from the consent agenda tonight? All right, seeing none. Ms. Eaton, will you please call the roll to approve the consent agenda?
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. All right, we will move on to resolutions. Ms. Eaton, you may read the first resolution whenever you're ready.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with P&G Telecommunications Incorporated, doing business as PowerNet, to install infrastructure on the Butler County cell tower at 945 South Main Street, utilizing CARES Act funds to provide Wi-Fi services in selected portions of the city of Oxford at a cost not to exceed $327,186.
Motion to adopt?
Move adoption.
Second?
Seconded.
Motion by Mr. Snavely, seconded by Councillor Southard. And I think I'm going to Mrs. Green for this.
Good evening. I want to take a moment and just really hit pause and explain the 3 different options that we have for this program to make sure that we're making a kind of a fully informed decision. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay. So the first option is if we went with public parks only. And this was one of the options we discussed, which the parks would include the Uptown Parks, the Oxford Community Park, Mary Day Park, and then either the Tri-Center and or Leonard Howe, maybe both. The cost for infrastructure and installation would be $140,108, and that would be from the CARES Act. And then our annual service fee would be $36,000 a year from the city general fund. The pros of this program would be provides Wi-Fi to anyone in a public park. It's open to all residents and visitors. And the cons is that it's not a good tool for school or work, especially during colder months. The second option is neighborhoods only, and we have targeted both Parkview Arms and the mobile home park. The cost for infrastructure, and then I want to back up, this would be for in-home use. So like in the apartments or in the mobile home house. The cost for infrastructure and installation is $239,091 from the CARES Act. And that service fee is the same service fee as the first one. So it's the same no matter what we do. It's $36,000 a year for the city. It's not in addition to, it's the same. The pros of neighborhood option is it provides Wi-Fi to every resident in a neighborhood that is home to typically a lower income resident. This will replace their personal internet connection and costs. So it'll save the family money. And it will save Talawanda money because they will no longer have to provide a hotspot to these homes if they don't already pay for an internet provider. The cons is that internet is available in these neighborhoods. Many families subscribe to service already, and we would be replacing this. So I'm not sure what we're providing is better or different than what they already have. And then the other con is that it's not open to all residents, especially those who may live in other lower income areas. And it's making an assumption of need based on an address and not tied to an actual need assessment of the family. Then if we did it together, all the parks and Parkview Arms and mobile home community, the total cost is what you see tonight in the resolution, which is $327,186 with the CARES Act dollars and that same annual fee of $36,000. The pros are that this is a broad Wi-Fi program for our community. It provides to our public parks and to targeted neighborhoods. It uses CARES Act for installation and equipment, and the service fee is the same, whether we do parks only or parks and neighborhoods. And the cons would be like, well, if we didn't do this, the funds would go to something else. I do want to hit pause because Doug and I have been talking, and one other thing we could do is proceed with the parks only right away. And then we could do a little bit more research on Wi-Fi options that might be more equitable. I could research a similar program to what Talawanda is doing with providing the hotspots, and it could be across town. But we literally had this conversation this morning. And so I haven't had time to gather that data. And so I wanted to open it up for conversation with you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, let me see if there's any public comment on this resolution.
I do not see any.
Okay, council discussion. Okay, I think I saw Jason's hand, then Chantel, then Glenn.
Yeah, I would love to see it, both the parks and the two areas of need that we mentioned. I think it's huge. This is one of the biggest things I think we can do to help those most in need in our community. I think this would be a major accomplishment. When we talk about, breaking that digital divide, this would be it. It would significantly decrease monthly costs for families who need it. It would give them access to internet because not everybody has it there. Not everybody has it consistently. And you also mentioned offsetting some of these resources that are being supplied by other organizations like Talawanda. So I'm all for it and I'm ready to go.
Councilor Ragu?
I mean, the original proposal by Parkview Arms and maybe the mobile home park would be, I'm seeing this. Can you hear me?
Yes.
For a second you went out, but I hear you now. Yep.
Okay. Okay, the reason why the original proposal included these areas was because I was based on where Talawanda School District was providing their hotspots. So they had already done a needs assessment to the families who were enrolled in their schools as to where they lived. The only thing that this isn't including is the area of town that's north of Sycamore that they also found needed hotspots as well. But this is, hitting a lot of the spots where Talawanda has already discovered there's a lot of kids that need internet. So, I mean, I guess the use of equity can be thought of in different ways. I mean, equity is trying to address the needs of a society that maybe aren't fair across all aspects. So this would be a very equitable situation. I agree with what Jason said. I'm in complete support of doing option 3 wherever we're doing the parks and the communities that are most at need. And I know Edna has used up the term digital divide so many times. I totally agree with that this is one of our most needed utilities that we aren't already providing, that we really need to address this.
All right. Councillor Ellerby.
All right. Thank you, Jessica, for the work that you've already done so far. But I have a question. With the amount of parks that we already have in the plan to be covered, have we looked into just providing Wi-Fi to the entire city of Oxford region?
I have not asked for that pricing.
Because it seems like well, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of how they implement this kind of Wi-Fi is they find the highest point in the area and they put some projectors or transmitters up, and then it gets beamed out, and then you basically have repeaters that are on other high areas in the municipality or whatever area you're trying to cover. And I'm wondering if we couldn't just cover the entirety of Oxford with the gap in funding between just the parks and including the parks as well as those targeted areas that we have. Because then if we covered everything, it would also include them as well.
I'd have to ask that question, but I think I know enough. But yes, the way you described it is correct. It's one giant mesh network. But I do think I know enough to say that model would be pretty much for outside use and would be limited inside. What they're doing at the neighborhoods is running interior equipment.
Okay, I've got, let's go Councillor Prithridge, Councillor Southard, Councillor Snavely.
Right, I would like to reiterate the thanks. I mean, I think it's hard to appreciate if you're on the outside how much research goes into even just seeing if this is feasible. And so it's really amazing the turnaround time. So I've been thinking about this, and I guess, I think about this like when we talk about an analog of the rental assistance, like we're not providing rental assistance to everyone in a complex. We're working for the Family Resource Center so that they can distribute rental assistance to those people in need. And the model that you describe of the Wi-Fi hotspot, I can imagine an analogous program, which is we get an X number of hotspots that would be distributed by someone like the Family Resource Center to those people in need. And that could not make assumptions about people in one place or another, and it could serve those same people. I guess I would have, and then it would be that it could reach other people in other places. I guess though, Jessica, what's your sense from doing the research on it? I mean, is this just kind of an idea that you had today? If we defer on this, what would it take to answer that question?
I would need another few weeks, honestly, to get enough information to create another option. We thought of it this morning. So I quickly called, a few places trying to get information, but I wasn't able to get it fast enough for tonight. But I do think if you wanted me to do more research, I could and bring something to the first meeting in November.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I would love to know the feasibility so I could compare apples apples on this one because it does have a certain amount of attractiveness. Again, I think we all share the goal of serving that population, but I'm thinking, for example, about the hardwiring. Like, what happens if the wiring gets damaged in Parkview Arms? Who would be responsible for the repair of the wiring? Is that an ongoing responsibility of the city? And so, yeah, whether there would be benefits to something either up on a tower or a discrete unit that's replaceable, rather than investing hardwiring in a very specific context whose owners may change and things like that. So anyway, thoughts on, if for example, someone does damage to a wall, who's responsible if that person doesn't have internet? Do they call the provider or us or?
David, I think we'd share the liability with the company installing it in the city since we're contracting for it. So we would hope that wouldn't happen, but it easily could. But let me just share a few things. We had discussed this morning because our concern was that we know that there are other families that do not have the internet, that do not live in those complexes. And we also know that there are many families, some without children, some with children, that already have internet. So we just felt that maybe we should take a pause and not rush to this and go ahead with the park project, because we know we're going to have to install the equipment on the cell tower that we have at Public Service Building, and we're working on that, and go ahead and install these mini transmitters that Glenn talked about so that you can pick it up in the parks. But we just felt that we wanted to present this to the city council so that maybe we could have some sort of a needs-based test to reach more of the families that do not have it than just the ones that live in this neighborhood, in these two neighborhoods. So that was it.
Okay. Here, let me get Councillor Southard and then Councillor Snavely, and then we'll come back to Councillor Bracken.
Well, I think this is a very important project. I'm glad we're working on it. Thank you for the work on it. I think it's essential to bridge the digital divide and make sure that everybody has access to the internet. It's becoming more and more crucial. And I just really favor this project. I don't know enough about the details to make many comments. So I trust those who are doing the research, and thank you for making it happen. That's, and making it happen with the CARES funds in time before the deadline, because I think that's going to be pretty rushed, since those funds are due to be spent at the end of December. So the sooner we can move forward, the better. And if it's possible to do this and then think about expanding it in ways that you've been talking about in the future, great. But if not, I think we should go for it. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Snavely.
Yeah, I'm very excited about the project, and I agree with everything that Edna said and others have said about its importance, and appreciation to Jessica and the city manager. Here's my concern. I think that there are people outside of those two neighborhoods who are just as much in need, and they need to have the opportunity to at least apply for it or ask for it. And so I think the city manager's idea of doing part of it now and having something on our agenda for the next meeting to do the rest makes some sense. In the meantime, kids have hotspots and can deal with school, and school's going back into in-person anyway, but that's really not the point, because they still need to have the internet. I think everybody in town needs to have the internet. So I think one thing that everybody's in agreement about is that we need to do this. And it's just a matter of how do we meet everybody's needs. And I'm afraid that rushing to just take care of two neighborhoods, we miss other people that need to be accommodated.
All right. Councillor Bracken, did you have another comment?
Yeah, if we're talking about making sure that we get it in time, as Edna mentioned, and we're only talking about expanding to more people that need it, I am all for that. But I absolutely do not want to lose these two communities, because I know they need it. And even though some of them have internet, subsidizing a basic utility for families in need is just as important to me. This is huge. This will be one of the things I'll be most proud of being a part of if we get this done. In terms of my humanitarian values, the reason I ran for council, this is huge, and I really want this to happen. And if we're just talking about how to expand it to more people who need it, I'm in love with that. That's fantastic. But if that hurts our ability to help these two communities, that would concern me. So I hope we don't go that direction.
All right. Councilor Ellerby.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything everybody said so far. I just want to make sure, well, I want to say that the proposal that you made, Jessica, which is we pass this resolution, authorize the funding, you start the implementation of the park wire mesh, and then we look into the serving the best needs of at least the two communities that we have stated in the resolution, and hopefully more. I would prefer to go that route than the other two options that you had in your slide deck.
Let me go Councilor Raghu and then Councilor Perthurch.
I'm curious about what Glenn had said earlier about the citywide. I know you were saying that you thought it was most likely not going to reach indoors, but I don't know. I'm just thinking about whenever you have your neighbor's Wi-Fi that creeps over into yours. So I that is an interesting thought to see if that would be feasible. I mean, because the thought is, yeah, we should have Wi-Fi citywide. That is a basic utility now. So building on the people who need it the most and then just growing from there. So, and I completely agree with what Jason said, that if we're going to expand it to more people who need it, awesome. But from my understanding, whenever I talked about it with Talawanda, that they had said that their hotspots, I mean, they're paying per month, and then there's a rental fee, and then there's the internet fee for using that hotspot. So I'm just wondering, I mean, the whole point of using up the CARES fund is before December. So the idea to have a big infrastructure purchase before the end of December was attractive because that satisfies the CARES needs. So I'm just wondering, where would the hotspot money come from post-December if you're renting these little hotspots month by month? It seems to me that there's a big deadline on how many months we're actually providing hotspots to people who need it.
Yeah, let me get Councilor Perthurch and then we'll come back to you, Doug.
So, I mean, again, I think we share the goal of doing it in the parks and we want to serve residents in these communities. But let's say we would like to evaluate two possible options for the best way to do that. Like right now it's speculative on the things that Councilor Raghu was talking about. You know, what would, if we could say in our first meeting in November, we would have those two options laid out in front of us, you know, so I guess the question is, what would we have to do with the resolution tonight to, like, I think we should have a vote. I mean, I would like to make a motion that, for example, we move forward with the tower and that we prepare to allocate the rest of the money. But how in the resolution do we hold off to say, strip exhibit A or whatever, and then we can vote on the rest of it later? I would just love to have two different options of meeting the goals side by side, because I don't want to rush into something where there could have been a different way of doing it better. So Doug, it sounds like you've got an answer to that.
Yeah, here's my suggestion. As the resolution is worded, it basically authorizes spending up to a certain amount. And so we could do just like we described the last time, or we could go ahead with the first part and come back to you and say, here's our thinking, and possibly have another resolution that either amends that or just describe to you what we've come up with and ask for a motion. I mean, we may just come right back to where we are now and say we don't have enough time. We found out that there are a lot of families in need at these two places. You know, our only concern was that we only have a certain sum of money, and I'd like to reach all those families that are in need. And that's not to say that those that have internet service couldn't use the money they now spend for something else. I mean, there are a lot of needy families out there. We all know that. But I guess we just wanted to take a pause and you know, we can talk to our consultants about what about this citywide net. I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but my experience, you know, as Chantel said, I've been places where, yeah, I pick up a neighbor's internet that's not secure. But I don't know that it's real consistent. It probably is if you're at a window, but if you're in the basement, you can't pick that up, you know. So these are questions we'd need to ask. So I think if you go ahead and pass the resolution, we'll quickly move forward with getting it on the tower. We still have to get approval from the county commissioners. However, I will share with you that our contract that we signed in 2007, they have to give us permission to place something on the tower. We just have to make assurances that it's not going to interfere with the existing equipment up there. And I believe we're doing that. So, you know, we'll move forward with the first part and we'll come back to you at our first meeting in November, because as you all know, time's running short. And I think we all want to do it right.
Okay. Let me get Councilor Ragu, Councilor Prithridge, Councilor Bracken.
So just to recap, I'm just curious, just to make sure, we're going to touch on what Glenn said about what would the feasibility and cost be for citywide, just to see if that is possible. So if we vote on this and we go with option A, we're still allocating up to that total amount, which would be allocated just for internet. And then it sounds like there's a general understanding that that remaining internet money will be used for the people who need it, not just for people who are leisurely walking in the park. And then the hotspots, we're going to make sure how, for that amount of money, how many months are we going to be renting them? Because that isn't something that I'm, you know, hopefully I'm wrong on that. It doesn't sound like the hotspot solution is a something we can pay for all at once that would last a prolonged amount of time. So I'm curious to know what the timeline would be if we end up allocating it to hotspots instead of hardwiring it into these specific neighborhoods.
We'll have to get back with you. I mean, we've sort of opened up, shall I say, a can of worms and created more work for ourselves. But, you know, like I've said, I think we want to do this right. We'll move forward with the rest of the money won't be spent until we come back to you and say, here's what we think, and make sure you agree with that.
All right. Let's go back to Councilor Prithridge.
Okay, so yeah, and I think that I mean, whether it's a can of words or whatever, we've walked down a path now. I think that providing it in the parks was relatively discreet. Like, we're serving public places in the city of Oxford. Once we start providing it to residents, we have to anticipate that others would say, what about my complex, or what about my complex? And I think we have to have an answer for that. And that's why perhaps something that's need-based, where it's more at the individual level and it's need-based, and you can have some criteria. But so I guess, so this comes back to the idea, a second question I have is, we are taking on an ongoing cost of $35,000 a year. Could we, for example, use CDBG money for something like that? I mean, what if is the general fund the only place? Because let's say we do this and then we decide to expand it, and then there's a pressure to expand it further. What are the various revenue streams we could use so that we can afford this over the long term to maintain the service in 2022 and 23 or whatever?
Well, David, I think we could use CDBG funds. We've committed to doing handicap accessibility ramps, but in the future, we could use it, because especially if it's need-based and it's going to low-income families, there, in my mind, and I'll have to check with Kim tomorrow, but I think we could use future CDBG funds.
I want to be a sustainable program so that we don't in 2 years be like, oh, we installed this stuff, we can't afford it anymore. Yeah, if we can make it something that we could sustain in 2024 and 25, then that's the option that I'm excited about most.
All right. Let me go Councilor Bracken, and then I'll come back to Mr. Newland.
Yeah, so I had a couple things. I'm not even sure where to start. So I think if we made it needs-based, the two communities that we're referring to would be almost universally included in that. And I don't mind, in fact, I would love to get it to as many people as needed as possible, although it becomes much harder when you're talking about individual homes that aren't part of a complex in which they all need it, right? Because there's much greater costs there. But if we can reach them, that's fantastic. But this is really important to me. I think the value here is huge. And I also think the cost annually is relatively small relative to what we get out of it. So if we move forward, I would like assurance that at the very least, those two communities receive the benefit here. To me, that's much more important than the parks. While I support the parks, it is nothing compared to, I think, the benefit that these communities would get from it. So if we go forward, I would like that assurance.
All right, let me get Mr. Newland and I'll come back to Councilor Southern.
Yeah, one thing I want to remind everybody is, according to the CARES rules, the equipment must be received or services rendered by December 20th. And just for an example, I went to the bike shop the other day and they were having I was getting my son a tire, they didn't have it in. They said they don't know when they will get it in because the supply chains are all messed up. So if we push this out another 2 weeks, my concern is, will they be able to get the equipment and have it installed by December 20th? I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
I would like not to take that chance.
I would favor option C, which is basically a coverage, in the parks and at the two communities. And I really do wish that we could have it all over town. And this has been discussed before. I mean, people have talked about how that would be a good idea. If that's possible in the future, that would be great. If it's not possible now, I understand. But I'd like to go with the widest possible installation that we can do right now. So, and I'm concerned. I bet you've already thought quite a bit about this. We don't want any funds to overlap with funds that are already committed by other organizations. So I'm not sure how that would work. I'm sure you have addressed that and have thought about how that would work. But in any case, I'm in favor of the option C as it was outlined in Jessica Green's proposal.
Back to Councilor Ellerby.
Just hearing all the comments, I believe we're at the point now where no one or everyone is in favor of authorizing the spending of the money. We're really just arguing over how to spend the other $237,000. And I would like to just call the question because I want the money spent.
All right. Do I have a second?
Yes.
All right. Ms. Eaton, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Thanks to staff, yes.
Ms. Regu.
And to be clear, we're voting on one of the three options. We're not actually saying which option we're voting on.
No, I think I was a little concerned.
Resolution, I think.
But I think you're voting on what we originally proposed, doing it in the parks and those two housing complex without any concern about needs base. So that's my understanding.
Option C, like what Edna said.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. Right. Did we get everybody? Okay.
Wait, yes.
Right.
So just to clarify, I would still like staff to come back to us at the next meeting to see if there are options for expanding beyond that. That would not take away from what we've just agreed to, but I don't want to give up on other people in town.
Right.
I will commit to getting you information about both citywide and a need, like an application-based program, maybe even before our next council meeting, but I'll let you know when I find out. By at the latest, the next council meeting.
Thank you very much, Jessica.
Okay.
All right. Councilor Bracken, before we move on.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, let's not lose this because of timing. That's all. I just wanted to caution us again. That would be a tragedy in my mind. Thanks.
All right. Okay, so that resolution is adopted. We will move on to our second resolution. Ms. Eaton, you may read it whenever you're ready.
Resolution authorizing the donation of $53,000 to Talawanda Oxford Pantry and Social Services as a subrecipient of Federal CARES Act funds to assist with the purchase of a refrigerated truck to be used for food distribution by Tops and by the Oxford Farmers Market.
Of adoption.
Second.
Seconded.
All right. Motion by Vice Mayor Snavely, second by Councilor Southard. And I will go back to Mrs. Green.
Good evening. So this one is based off of discussion at the last council meeting and your feedback. And if you remember, TOPS has received the first round of funding from us, and it was to buy a used refrigerated truck. And then when we learned about the third round of funding, they asked for a bit more funding for a new refrigerated truck. And we kind of went back and forth. And then they got on and spoke that, you know what, the farmers market also wants a truck. And so they came up with a joint proposal together where TOPS will own and operate the truck, but that the farmers market will have usage rights as well. So it will serve as a mobile pantry to deliver food to areas, and then will also be able to be used by the farmers market for their e-commerce program from the farmers market. TOPS will maintain control and liability and, you know, all of the maintenance of the truck, and they've worked out a usage agreement with the farmers market. And I have both Ann and Ross, Ann Fuhrer from the TOPS and Ross Olson available to answer any questions if needed.
All right. Is there anyone from the general public who would like to address this resolution?
I do not see any.
All right. Council discussion.
Call the question unless somebody has a, go ahead, Chantel, I'm sorry.
I'm just curious, what is the difference between the new and the used truck as far as specifications besides being new?
I honestly don't have that information for you. We have asked to see like a cost comparison when they receive the grant, but I don't have it ahead of time. I do, their letter describes the truck they're hoping to get, which I could pull up.
It looks like Anne has her hand up.
Oh, she does. Let me unmute Anne. Hold on. Is that okay? Are you guys okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Anne, go ahead.
We haven't developed the exact specifications, but we have been talking with I don't have their exact title. Our board member, Dave Rosenthal, has been talking with Premier Conversions in Cincinnati. The difference basically is between used and new, but it would be, I think, much easier and give us a longer lasting product to have a new truck that we could work with Premier Conversions in Cincinnati to meet specifications that would optimally meet the needs of both the farmers market and TOPS. So that's all I can say right now.
Okay. I saw Councilor Ellerby.
I'm seconding the call to question.
Okay. All right. I think we are all in favor of this. Ms. Eaton, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Southard?
Yes.
Mr. Bracken?
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby?
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge?
Yes.
Ms. Dragoo?
Yes.
Mr. Snavely?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
Yes. All right. That resolution is adopted. And I just counted. That gives you 62 days to get your truck. Okay. We will move on to resolution number 3. Ms. Eaton, you may read it whenever you're ready.
A resolution authorizing the donation of $195,000 to the Oxford Chamber of Commerce as a subrecipient of Federal CARES Act funds to administer a grant program for local businesses as set forth in Exhibit A attached here too.
All right, motion to adopt.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Perthert, second by Counselor Southard. And I will come back to Mrs. Green again. Or no, I'm going to, going back to Jessica.
It's me again. So this one is, we also heard from City Council at the last meeting, a real interest in doing more for businesses. And so what we have proposed to do is take the remainder of the CARES Act funding and give it to the Oxford Chamber of Commerce for the purpose of a business grant program. So they will be the administrators of the grant program, and they will make sure that businesses apply and fit the criteria that we've established. And then they can give out grants to businesses that don't have to be repaid. They're just grants that are up to $5,000. And the chamber will be taking an administrative fee to help us do this, but they'll be helping staff out by having them do it and process the checks and make sure everyone's following the rules and that kind of thing, instead of city staff. So it's hopefully a win-win for the chamber because they get some support, but also our businesses then also get another round of grant support.
All right. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this resolution?
I do not see any.
All right, Councilor discussion and questions. I see Vice Mayor Snavely's hand.
Yeah, so by the rules of the CARES Act, do we meet the criteria of spending by December 20th by making the grant to them, or do they have to actually expend those funds in order for it to count?
That is a very good question. They need to expend, the businesses also need to expend it, but it can be for payroll, rent, and COVID-related expenses back to March 1. And so they can, report what they've spent, and then we can give them a grant for that purpose.
But they have to move pronto to get this done.
Chop, chop, yeah.
Let's see, I got Mr. Perthert, Councilor Bracken, and then Councilor Gibb.
So I just run real quick. Thanks also to staff for coming up with this idea, and also for, I think the Chamber of Commerce is the natural partner in the same way that we're looking to TOPS to help with serving the food need in the community, or the Family Resource Center with rent assistance. I think the Chamber is the perfect partner to help distribute this money to the business community. And so thank you for turning this around so fast. I think this is a great solution.
Councilor Bracken.
I was wondering if we could speak to the remaining CARES funds and our other goals and where that's at in relation to this.
I don't think I understand your question fully. Is there something else that you want an update on, like a project?
Yeah, so before we sign off on everything, I was wondering where we stood with shelter and other CARES Act funding that we.
So I do, okay, thank you. I do plan to bring forward in November a cold shelter and transitional house proposal, but I'll be using the general fund and not the CARES Act.
Yeah, we had discussed that, but I wasn't sure if everything was clean and looking like it's going the right direction and everything's good.
It is progressing.
And we plan on utilizing the money that we're going to get back because we're converting our gift card program to a grant program. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that held up. We discussed that last time, and I thought that was actually a very good, smart decision.
Councilor Ragu?
I was just reading through the eligibility criteria. So I'm assuming they don't have to be chamber members, or do they have to be chamber members?
This must be open to every business in Oxford. And so I'll actually help them get started in getting the news out to everybody. I'm actually hoping after tonight to have a state of business meeting with everyone in Oxford and kind of host a webinar about what we're doing, and then point them to Kelly at the Chamber of Commerce to kind of get rolling with the grant program. But yeah, it's open to everyone.
And I hate to keep going back to that same meeting whenever people talked about an Asian bias against supporting different Asian businesses at that subcommittee for businesses. So I'm a little alarmed because I don't know who made that comment, but I do know who was in the meeting. So I want to make sure that that doesn't happen. And I'm curious about what the definition of locally owned businesses means. Do they have to live within the city of Oxford, Oxford Township?
To me personally, I think locally owned business is with an owner who lives within the city of Oxford limits. That would be my definition.
Okay. Is that also their definition?
I will clarify my definition for them.
Yeah, and we don't anticipate assisting businesses outside the city. The township has their own CARES Act money. I learned at the leadership meeting Monday that they're planning to use some of their money to assist the school district with their continued internet needs. So I don't think that's been made public yet, but they do have some CARES Act funding that they can help the handful of businesses that are located in the township, if they so choose.
What if someone owned a business in Oxford but lived in Hamilton?
They would still be eligible to apply for this grant if they own a business in the city of Oxford limits and they live somewhere else. But we might give small, like we did with the gift card program, we gave a small bonus level to people who resided in Oxford. And so I'll work with the chamber on that criteria of the grant program, but then there is some level of trust that they're going to facilitate this program for us. That's why we're donating it to them, so they do it instead of staff.
Okay. And then I'm assuming, I know it says for industry businesses impacted by the pandemic. So because I know last time there were some businesses that did not have to shut down. They were still considered essentials, but received the money. So I'm assuming that they would not be prioritized with getting this money, right? That the business is actually affected by having a reduction in occupancy and whatever else.
Yeah, so I have a sample grant application that outlines those things, and then the chamber would have to do a weighted score and award the funds. Yeah.
All right, let me get Mr. Ellery, and then we'll come back to Mr. Prithridge.
I was just going to call the question. I mean, handing this over to the Chamber of Commerce, it's been in town for as long as I can possibly remember, and I have full faith and confidence they can adjudicate this money. So I'm going to put forth the motion to call the question on this matter.
All right. Do I have a second?
And I'll second it just with a comment in the same way that we trust the Family Resource Center to determine the need, or TOPS to determine the food need. I think we trust the chamber to determine the business need, and that's hard work. And that's why I'm also happy that there's an administrative support there. So yeah, I'm happy to second the motion. Call a question.
We all second. Let's do it.
Oh yeah.
Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. All right, that resolution is adopted. We will move on to ordinances. We have one first reading tonight. Ms. Eaton, you may read the first reading whenever you're ready.
An ordinance repealing ordinance number 3555, creating the Oxford Small Business Stimulus Program and declaring an emergency.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded.
Seconded.
All right, motion by Mr. Prithridge, second by Mr. Ellerby, and I will come back to Assistant City Manager Green, because I think they'll probably be confused on this one, even though I understand it.
This is our last CARES Act discussion of the evening, so you'll be done with me after this. But our proposal for this one is to repeal the gift card program that we established back in April. And so we bought gift cards from all these businesses in town, and then we resold the gift cards to the general public. That was our concept. And that was great, but the businesses still have to redeem those gift cards and be out the cost of the food or the service or whatever later. And so what we're recommending is to just cut up those gift cards. We're done with them, and this essentially becomes a grant. The businesses can keep their money. The only reason it's not the full 200,000 is that we spent $4,600 to make the gift cards. So like we literally printed like thousands of little gift cards. And so we can't redeem, like that expense can't be part of the grant program. We've already expended it for gift cards. Now for the gift cards that have already been sold to the general public, we're going to pay the businesses back for those gift cards that are sold and give them a very detailed report of gift cards A, B, and C have been sold. Here's your money for those, and you need to redeem those. Like you need to honor those gift cards. And then we'll give them a record of all the gift cards that have been destroyed. That is our proposal. And then in my Jessica brain, I don't know what to call it, I call it that, is that fund would go back to the general fund. And then we could use it for other purposes. And we had talked about possibly the cold shelter and traditional house, but you don't have to use it for that. That was just something I would plan to present in the future.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this ordinance?
I do not see any.
Okay, then let's go to council discussion. And I think I saw Councilor Southard's hand first.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was such a great idea and such a good program. People were enthusiastic about, oh, some people were, I guess not enough people were enthusiastic about it. And that's why it didn't take off as much as we hoped. But do you think that instead of cutting them all up, that it might be worth offering them as holiday gifts? Or is there some way that the businesses could use those cards to make more money? I just like such a shame. You've put in so much work, and it seems like there might be a way that they could be used. I'm just raising the question. I don't really have an answer, and I know you've put in a huge amount of work on this, and maybe you've already thought of this, but that's my little input on it.
In my opinion, it would be nice actually to get rid of them and have the businesses not have to redeem those cards and not have to have the cost of those cards come out of their business later. And the CARES Act, now that it exists, can redeem our general fund for the money that we're out and allow us to pay ourselves back in a way. I don't know how else to say it better, but that was kind of the reason. Joe might be able to describe it a little bit better. But that's the reasoning, is the businesses won't have to have that cost come in later, and the CARES Act could help us out. So Joe, do you want to
having council vote on this and saying, yes, it is going to be a grant program will help back up the use of the CARES funding. And also the fact that we are going to repay all the people that have sold the cards to make them whole, showing, yes, this is a grant. We're refunding the money for the cards that people may have already used or may use in the future since they've already been sold. So it's all working towards the goal of saying that, yes, this is a true grant program. And with all the having council back it up and having this discussion should be enough. I hope that the auditors will agree that this is truly a grant program. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right. This is a first reading, so we will see this again in.
Actually, I think we were hoping to pass this as an emergency.
Emergency.
Sorry. And then,
Sorry. Okay. Yes. So, Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. All right. I know Jessica put a lot of time in this first time around, so thank you for doing that, and we will move ahead. All right, we are on to second readings. Ms. Eaton, you may read the second reading whenever you're ready.
An ordinance approving a conditional use permit application to allow an existing detached garage structure at 305 North Main Street to be used as an accessory dwelling unit in the R3MS single, 2, and 3 family Mile Square Residential District with conditions.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Mr. Pritchard, second. Second by Vice Mayor Snavely. All right, we will go to
I
Mr. Pitt.
cannot second that. I'm trying to tell you that I'm recusing on the item,
Okay,
so I can't second it. I'll come back when this one's over.
all right. Thank you. So I need a second.
Second.
Second from Councilor Ellerby. All right, now I'll go to Mr. Perry.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. No changes since the first reading, and just as a general reminder, this is the first of its kind accessory dwelling unit that's gone through the Planning Commission and in front of council. This is to actually convert an existing building that is behind a house at 305 North Main into a dwelling through the permitting process. So this was heard by Planning Commission, and comments were taken through that process. Scott Webb, the applicant on behalf of the Degg family, is in the audience if you have any questions, but there actually aren't any changes from the first reading. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this ordinance before council?
There is none.
All right. Council questions and discussion? All right. Looks like, yes, Councilor Southern.
Yeah, I was very concerned about the decision standards, and I have looked at the decision standards, especially items H and I, regarding the safety of it. And to me, those issues still bothered me. That the objections raised by the fire chief and the police chief are still valid or seem to be valid. And unless they have any comments, I would like to know if the police chief and fire chief have any further comments about that, or whether they stand by their previous recommendations.
I can answer that if you'd like.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, we did work with the fire and police chief after the Planning Commission meeting. So we believe we're at a place where it's satisfactory, consistent with the original concerns and comments. And those have to do with the visibility of the building from the street and also the address visibility. So those changes, although they are concerns, we believe that they've been balanced with some changes that would make that visible and accessible. So it wouldn't look like a garage from the street because of the changes to the facade. And so because of the conditions that were recommended by Planning Commission, we believe that's been addressed.
Okay. All right. Any further questions? All right. Seeing none, Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
No.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. All right, that ordinance is adopted. We will move on to our second reading. Ms. Eaton, you may read it whenever you're ready.
An ordinance repealing Oxford Codified Ordinance, Section 931.13, entitled Charges, and adopting new Oxford Codified Ordinance, Section 931.13, entitled Charges.
Motion to adopt?
Move adoption.
Second?
Seconded.
Adoption by Vice Mayor Snavely, second by Councilor Southard, and I will go to City Manager.
Thank you. The provision or the codified ordinance section that Mary Ann referenced requires compactor users who contract directly with Rumpke are required to pay a landfill charge. And this charge no longer serves any purpose. And so we're asking for you to repeal this provision.
All right, is there anyone from the public who would like to address this ordinance before council?
I'm sorry, no.
Okay, that's what I thought, but just checking. Okay, council questions or discussion? Okay, Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge.
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. All right, that ordinance is adopted. We will move on to our third second reading of the night. Ms. Eaton, you may read it whenever you're ready.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 3538, supplemental budget ordinance number 7, to make supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2020.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Southard, second.
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Snavely. We will go to Mr. Newland.
Yes, on the first item, the local coronavirus relief funds that we received from the county auditor, I did have to adjust that by 45 cents because at first we were supposed to receive $832,786 and 50 cents, but we only received $832,786.05. So that's just an adjustment of 45 cents. And then the first reading we had tonight, there was an emergency. We talked about refunding the gift card purchases. We received $15,590 from people buying the gift cards. And this is appropriating that same amount of money so we can refund the businesses to make them whole on their grants.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this ordinance before council?
There's not.
All right. Council questions or discussion?
Call the question.
Second? Second from Mr. Prithridge. All right. Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. All right. That ordinance is adopted. We will move on to announcements and communications, and I'll start with City Manager Elliott.
Thank you. I just have a few items to share with the city council. First off, I just want to comment on at our last council meeting, a comment was made that the city of Oxford spends more on police than the city of Bowling Green. I sent out a detailed email to city council, and I'll just summarize it. Basically, the city of Bowling Green in fiscal year 2018 spent $6,363,000 on police out of all of its governmental funds, and the city of Oxford spent about $5 million. So there's a difference there of about $1.3 million between the two communities on spending for police. And the comment was also made about the fact that we don't spend much on public health and welfare. And when we compare ourselves to the city of Bowling Green, we spent about $129,000, whereas the city of Bowling Green only spent about $87,000. And I also made the comment that, as we know tonight, when Sabrina Jewell came in and talked about the senior citizens levy, many of those social service that we receive are funded at the county level by a property tax. And just to give you another example, Butler County Mental Health and Addiction Recovery Services receives 68.7%, or just under $10 million of its fiscal year 2018 revenues from a mental health property tax levy, for which Oxford property tax owners contribute to. So I just wanted to clarify that. A couple of other things. Unfortunately, we have a delay on our ban on expanded polystyrene. It was set to go in effect on December 31st for basically national food service operations. And House Bill 242 was adopted by the General Assembly on September 23rd and signed by the governor shortly thereafter. And it preempts the city of Oxford from enforcing this regulation. The good news, though, is this bill has a sunset provision of 12 months from the effective date of the bill. So what we're going to do during that time is continue to notify our businesses, our food service operations, both national and local, about this delay, and basically further educate them on the harmful effects of utilizing expanded polystyrene, and then suggest alternatives to it. So I wanted to share that with City Council as well. You did receive a copy of a letter that we received from the Community Arts Center, and they're requesting that the DORA be extended to include them in it. We are planning to recommend to you at the next meeting that we, and I'll come back to this request, but we are planning at the next meeting to recommend some dates for the DORA, and the dates would be November 27th to Friday, January 22nd. I think Jessica coined a phrase when this, okay, I won't use that. But anyway, the students will be on. And so we'd like to re-implement it then. And we'll bring something forward for you at the next meeting. But regarding the Community Arts Center's request, we have to go through the whole process of publishing a notice about this amendment and amending our plan. So we can't get that done. We will get it in place, though, to include them if you so choose, or if you agree, for the summer DORA program. And we will get back with them and let them know that. I think what they can do, depending on the license that they have, I think they were concerned about two things. One, they wanted to be included in the DORA, but they also wanted to be able to walk around their large grassy area. And since it's property that they lease from the university, we believe they can do that. They just can't go onto the public sidewalk because it's outside the DORA boundaries. So we'll have more information for you on that. And then the last thing that I wanted to comment on is that, as you know, every Monday we have an Oxford leadership group, which includes McCullough High Memorial Hospital, Talawanda School District, Miami, the city, the Chamber of Commerce, Enjoy Oxford, Oxford Township. Hopefully I haven't missed anyone there, but we discuss COVID and our local response. And as you know, we get information from Miami, from their dashboard. We get information from the Butler County Board of Health. And I might add, not only do we meet Monday with the group that I just mentioned, the leadership group, but then we also have a teleconference on Thursday with McCullough High Memorial Hospital, Miami University, and the health commissioner, Jennifer Baylor. So with all that information, I wanted to give you some updated information about the COVID-19 cases. The updated figure for our zip code is 162, which represents 2% of all reported cases in Butler County as of October 12, 2020. This figure excludes Miami University student cumulative cases, which are at 2,220 as of October the 12th, according to the Butler County Board of Health report, or 2,175 according to the Miami University dashboard as of October 20th, 2020. And the total reported cases for Butler County, which does include Miami University students, is 7,998. And of course, as we all know, under the public health advisory system for the state, as of October 15th, there are now 29 counties, including Butler County, which has been level 3 for quite a while, at this level 3 level. I might also add that there have been 115 confirmed deaths in Butler County with an average age of 75.4, and the age range of death is from 30 to 101. And I know this evening we had Mrs. Witt, I believe was her name, comment about the fact that we aren't enforcing the mask ordinance. And it is correct that we have not cited anyone under the mask ordinance. We have cited several under the mass gathering. I still believe that the encouragement and education is the way to go. I read an article tonight before the council meeting in the Scientific American website, and it talked about how super spreading events actually drive most of the COVID-19 spread. And I think you can witness that with the large parties that we have had with students here. But Basically, we do act on the comments that we get. For example, the one that she mentioned with the Oxford Township trustee, Chief Jones did talk to the police chief of Oxford Township about the officer who had his mask down at Speedway and was talking to the attendant, not thinking that he should have had his mask up. So, you know, the officer apologized for the concern that it caused. And, you know, we're still getting used to this new way of life. I mean, I can share with you when I was in Columbus with my son, I happened to walk in Lowe's without my mask on. And I quickly realized I didn't have it on, pulled my shirt up and ran back out to the car. So, you know, I do think we have to keep reminding people that it's very important. And in the article that I referenced, I enjoyed reading what they're doing in Japan. They basically talk about the 3 C's and avoiding closed spaces with poor ventilation, crowded spaces, and close contact settings. So once again, I think we all realize, all of us here, that we have to remain vigilant, and stay the course, and continue reminding people of how important it is to wear masks and to avoid gatherings of more than 10 people, and to wash your hands and practice these things. And that's all I have for you this evening, unless you have some questions for me.
All right, seeing no questions, I will move on to Mr. Dreisbach.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
All right, Chief Jones.
I'll just remind everyone in the public that Talawanda started back face-to-face today. So we made some posts about school zones, you know, obeying traffic in that, and watching for school buses and watching for school bus violations. So just remind the public to be more alert. Also expect heavy traffic this week while we work with the school on their new drop-off procedures on 27 by the high school, 732 by the middle school, and then Sycamore and Locust at Kramer. So pickup and drop-off times are going to cause congestion. You know, there's a lot of new regulations the schools are facing with not allowing children out until a certain time. So we're getting backups, but we are trying to work through those, and we'll keep working on those issues.
All right. Thanks, Chief. And again, I'm going to point out to everybody his pink badge for Breast Cancer Awareness Week. I've seen a lot of social media posts on that, so good job. Let's see, Mr. Newland, anything you've got like to add tonight?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
All right, I will go to Chief Deathridge. Anything there?
Nothing, sir.
Okay, I will go to Mr. Woodell from Parks and Recreation.
Good evening. Yeah, just a few quick updates. One more reminder about the drive-through circus happening next Thursday night, the 29th, from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the Tri parking lot. And then once we get past the Halloween event, at the November 3rd meeting, I'll bring you some details about what our plans are for Veterans Day and how we'll do that virtually. And then I just want to publicly thank Talawanda School District. They are going to allow us, or at least it appears at this point, if nothing changes, access to their schools to run our youth basketball league. So that's important to us. There'll be some new protocols and procedures that we'll have to follow to make that happen. But we do appreciate the willingness of the school to allow that opportunity to us and allow that league to happen. But, you know, there'll be plenty of protocols and procedures that we'll follow both from the state and local health department. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Woodell. We'll go to Assistant City Manager Green.
I have nothing this evening. Thank you.
All right, we'll go down to Mr. Perry.
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Eaton, anything you have tonight?
Nothing, thank you.
All right. We'll go to the Law Director, Mr. Kennard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I'm going to mention is that we are not that far off from December when the sunset date on House Bill 197 will take effect, which governs, among other things, virtual meetings. There's already discussions going on in Columbus about the new normal, whatever that may be. I think that in light of the things that we've had to do to determine, to function through COVID, we've discovered that we can do some things that maybe are better than how we've done them in the past. The Ohio Municipal Attorneys Association is asking for legislation that will allow the continued use of virtual meetings under certain circumstances. This is obviously not an action item for council, but there will be a time sooner rather than later where you will have to take up the discussion and ultimately make a decision on how you want to move forward. And I will plant the seed now that it's quite possible. There will be some flexibility about how you want to engage in the office that you hold as individuals and as a city council. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to council. I'll start with Councilor Ragu.
Thanks, Chris. That's a really good segue because, I mean, I think that we've all noticed that our meetings have probably been a lot more full. We've had a lot of people engaged and wanting to make comments and actually staying through the whole meeting, whereas it wasn't unusual to only have Prue and Bob in the audience for most meetings before when we had to meet in person. So, I think that with what Chris said, yeah, there's so many different, there could be a new normal. But I think that beyond just how we meet as a council, I think that it's more important, how do we engage the public as much as we can and be as transparent and as accessible. And I hope that we can continue to allow people to have a platform like this where people can make comments online and they can be at these meetings, whether it's by Zoom or whatever avenue we choose to go by. So I think that for the one bright shining light for COVID is that it has definitely improved engagement, at least in our meetings. So I'm very appreciative of that. And I hope that we continue to encourage that going forward. The last thing would be about since Doug had brought up the polystyrene phase out plan, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe you said this, but I just want to be clear, because it's HB 242, right, that was passed, and they had said that they added language making the tax and fee prohibitions on bags and other auxiliary containers effective for only 12 months rather than permanent. So is that your understanding as well?
You're on mute, Doug.
Yes, it's 1 year, Chantel, that we're delayed from implementing it.
Gotcha. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't saying that it was permanent. Okay. Okay, great.
Let me go back to see Law Director Kennard's hand up.
Yeah, one of the things that in looking at that legislation and then comparing it back to the Oxford legislation, I still think that it's important that the messaging continue to go on with the Oxford businesses so that they can begin that transition. It's not as if this should be dead time. It should be proactive time to try and get in front of this. So I just simply add that to the conversation because it's easy to lose sight of what needs to be done in the future. Thank you.
All right. Move on to Councilor Ellerby.
It's exactly 2 weeks until Election Day. Get out and vote. Wear your mask and just try to consider other people when you're out in public and you have to do your everyday tasks, because we should start caring about each other, especially since we've had the year that we've had. It's kind of crazy.
All right. Vice Mayor Snavely.
I want to echo Glenn's comments and remind people that early voting has started. And you can go to the Board of Elections. As we've discussed at the beginning of this meeting, you can get a ride if you don't have the ability to get there. Having done that, I would tell you that it's pretty quick and easy. The line may look long, but it moves quickly and it's very well organized. So get out there and vote, and you can do it now.
All right. Councilor Southard.
Yes, early voting is easy. It is a very The line moves quickly if there is a line, and I also encourage everybody to do that. It's also, since the schools are in session, I'd like to remind everybody, and we also are going to have daylight savings time coming up, that if this has come up in my neighborhood, which doesn't have streetlights, and so our neighbors are all agreeing that we should leave our streetlights on in the early morning. And I'd recommend that if you can have a front light, a front light, I didn't mean a street light. We don't have street lights. We only have front lights. Our front lights, if you turn your light on so that the students can get to walk in the streets more safely, that is a really good idea. And I'd even recommend having your front light on a light sensitive timer so that it goes on when it gets dark and turns off when it gets light. Also, trick-or-treating is, as I understand it, October 31st, which is a Saturday from 5:30 to 7:30. That's still on, isn't it? And am I right?
Yes.
Yep. And so I encourage everybody to be safe and follow whatever guidelines we are asked to follow and to be careful. So I just want to mention that. And also I wanted to mention one more thing, that we've been talking a lot about Wi-Fi and internet. And, this is important for everybody. And one of the things that is happening right now is that ILR is in session. That's the Institute for Learning and Retirement, which is available for senior citizens or anybody over 55, I guess. And our ILR program this semester is entirely online. And so hundreds of seniors in our community are taking part in classes all on the internet, and everybody is coming up to speed. And because we don't have to travel, people are coming into our classes as far away as Portland, Oregon. And, so people are coming from all over to come to our classes. So that's another advantage that's happened. ILR is a program that is run through Miami University, but it's independent. And the teachers teach for free and as volunteers. And for several years, Doug and I organized an ILR class about how local government works. So I think we did it twice or three times so far. Maybe we could do it in the future, but we've all been way too busy to even think about it. Maybe we'll do it in the future, but it was a great program and a great way to let people know and to hear from all the departments in the city. And people had a lot of questions, a lot of input, and that was a very successful program. I hope we can do it again in the future. But I just wanted to mention that all the people, all the students, the senior citizens who are students in the ILR program are all doing it online. So everybody is getting engaged and in these new methods of learning. And it's also it's a very important program for people's mental health. It keeps them connected, it keeps them interested. People learn things all their lives, and learning all your life is really what it's all about. Thanks.
All right.
Don't forget to vote.
Councilor Bracken.
Yes, I wanted to say how happy I am that it looks like we're moving forward with Wi-Fi. I think that's huge. I'm really happy about that. And I hope we go forward with our shelter proposals. And between that and the help we've just provided to our businesses, I think we've done a great service to the city, keeping the commerce going, providing services, keeping people employed, keeping businesses sustainable, and all while also helping those at the bottom work their way up during a really, really tough time. And so we really presented, hopefully, we've used these care funds in a way to sort of scaffold our community to keep it in place during these tough times. And I'm really looking forward to these things going forward. And I want to thank staff for all the hard work they've put in on it. Thank you.
All right. Councilor Prithridge.
Okay, just in advance, I want to thank council and staff for the time I've asked for an agenda item so that we could just have a conversation about the comprehensive plan and what our vision is for it. I think that Mr. Perry has shared some really good ideas about that we could use a different kind of model of a comprehensive plan that's a little more dynamic, that could weave together some of our strategic thinking, something a little more, not just a thick document that sits on a shelf. I just would love to have a conversation about the scope of that, because I feel like there are all kinds of different ways that we're moving in terms of planning, about climate action planning, transportation, and now we're kind of talking about some things related to policing. How do we pull all that stuff together? So before we ink the budget, I think it would be really good to just have some consensus about what we're going to do in 2021, because we're moving forward on a lot of different things simultaneously. And how do we do that efficiently and efficaciously? I really look forward to that. And in a related vein, I've been thinking, and I guess I'm thinking of introducing a resolution next time, because I've been trying to piece together how we can respond to PCRRC recommendation. I think we should act on that recommendation. But to me, as a counselor, I want to have a conversation about the scope of, I know what the spirit and the intent is, but I want to, so I'm going to craft a resolution that I'm going to try to put into language a couple different things. One is, I think, the narrow thing that Jessica was talking about, the chief was talking about, how you enhance policing through better provision of social services inside that policing framework, which I think like that's something you could act on quickly. But then the bigger picture of how you tackle all those big social issues, I think we want to talk about the scope of that. And I guess I would love to talk about that in relation to the comprehensive plan. That's anyway. And I guess Doug or Mayor Smith. I mean, I'm going to work on some language for that to try to. I've been hearing what we've been talking about and putting some consensus, I hope. Do I need to ask for a second to call for that legislation if I develop it, or if I craft it and introduce it? How does that work with a resolution?
I have to look at the council rules, but I believe you can put something on before the agenda goes out, David.
Okay. And it could be that we view a verbatim one of what's exactly what the PCRRC has forwarded, but I'm going to offer up a slightly different version, and then maybe we can talk about those and act on them. So anyway, that's just a heads up. That's something I'll be getting to, and I look forward to input from staff on that also. So we'll be working on that. So thanks.
Just a few quick things. I'm still trying to compile evaluations for the city manager and law director and finance director, but I don't have evaluations from everybody. So if the counselors could get those to Mary Ann before the next meeting, so I can try to get those tabulated, be appreciated. In relation to the comp plan, I was thinking maybe we could stand to have a work session on that, so we could, because I think we all have some different ideas about that, and maybe give some direction to staff on what we're thinking about the comp plan. So perhaps one of the meetings in November, maybe the second one, we can do a work session so we can give them some direction to go on. Halloween, if you check the city website, I believe we have some guidelines out there for Halloween and trick or treat, because we want it to be safe and we want it to be fun. And I too, closing remarks. Everybody go out and vote. It should be quite a time in 2 weeks. So,
Mayor Smith?
Yes.
Oh, just before we go, as something, I had to ask for an agenda item on that. I just asked that we, in the comprehensive plan, that we time it not after we've inked the budget. So, because the decision of the scope of the plan could bear on the budget. So if we can do that so that before the second reading on the budget, I think would be helpful. That's just my only request as the person who requested the item.
Yes. No problem.
Move we adjourn.
I have a second. Second from Mr. Prithridge.
Seconded. Seconded. Okay.
May
Sorry.
call the roll, so we may adjourn.
Good night, everyone.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely.
Did I lose everybody? We didn't hear you, Bill. Okay. Bill
Mary Ann,
said-
I didn't hear the last couple names. At least I didn't.
I did.
Mr.
Okay.
Snavely,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.